So, I grew up in a middle-class family in a low-income area. My dad built his dream house there, and even though they could afford to move, they never wanted to. My parents had a tendency to spoil my older brother far more than me, mostly because I was the quiet one who never spoke up. This resulted in my brother getting his way more often than me. Nothing blatant, but it was enough to give him an entitlement complex a mile wide. When my brother was a teenager, he struggled with some serious mental illnesses. These were absolutely legitimate and crippled his ability to function for several years. My parents were obviously very concerned for him, and so they willingly paid top dollar for the best psychiatrist and psychologist that they could find to help him. By the time I was ready to go to a different city to start university, my brother was at a stage where he was ready to go as well. It was decided that he would go to a university as the same city as me, and we would live together. My parents offered to pay for our rent all the way through university, so us flatting together obviously made a lot of financial sense for them. We would have to pay for everything else out of our student loans. Everything was set. We had found a good student flat, settled in, etc. He had a new care team in this new city. Awesome. Unfortunately, my brother had an episode on his first day that resulted in him not going to class. This meant he was removed from his program, compulsory first day, with the option of starting again in the second semester. Now, the obvious, logical, and sensible thing to do in that situation is for my brother to go home while I find a roommate to take the spare bedroom and he could move back up and try again next semester. My brother didn't like that idea. You see, he always hated living at home. He would always whine about how old our house was or how poor our neighborhood looked. Our neighborhood was lovely, great sense of community, and I always loved it there. But he felt that he deserved better. Next thing we know, his new psychologist has written a letter to my parents stating it would be a good idea to allow him to stay living in the new city, to allow him to acclimate to his new surroundings. My parents followed this advice and allowed him to stay. They replaced his weekly loan amount with an allowance of the same value and thought everything would move forward from there. This worked for a few weeks, but my brother started to hound my parents for more money. You see, he wasn't a student, so in his mind, why should he have to live like a student? No instant noodles and TV dinners for him. He wanted steak and lamb for dinner. He wanted to go to nice restaurants with his friends and go shopping whenever he felt like it. He wanted a new iPhone and a new MacBook because his was slow, etc. My parents eventually gave in and doubled his allowance. Second semester rolls around and my brother hasn't even bothered enrolling. My parents weren't happy, but his psychologist writes him another letter, and so it continues. Fast forward 3 years, and I am graduating with a job offer from my university in my field. The apartment is nice and convenient to my new job, so I continue to live there, only now I pay for my half of the rent and utilities. My brother is still not working or studying, and his allowance is now almost equal to my salary. Every time my parents try to force him home, his psychologist writes another letter, and my parents' trust in my brother's care team was high. They did save his life after all. By this point, my parents are just paying for his half of the utilities directly on top of his allowance. I suggested to my parents to get a second medical option, as he has been seeing this psychiatrist almost weekly for 3 years with no improvement, but my brother flat out refuses. He likes her. She speaks to his soul, whatever that means. About a year and a half after I graduate, our landlord decides to sell the apartment and the new owners want to live there. Normal thing that happens, and I'm not too bothered by this. I wanted to take the opportunity to get my own place. I have a serious girlfriend whom I want to eventually marry, so would like my own space that she could one day move into, and just generally move on with my adult life. But my parents don't want my brother living on his own just yet, and again, he is refusing to come home. They beg me to stay for just 1 more year while they figure out an arrangement for him. We got rather short notice to move, so I can understand this, and 1 more year won't matter too much to me. So apartment hunting we go. My brother goes fully off the entitled deep end. He will only view apartments well outside of our price range. Anything within budget is either too old or too small, or too dark or too ugly. He wants a new modern apartment in an expensive suburb in the heart of the city. His psychologist writes another letter outlining the importance of a comfortable environment for him. My parents cave once again and agree to get his dream apartment for us. But I can't afford half of the new rent. They compromise with me, and I only have to pay the same rent as I was before, which is barely 1/3 of the rent at the new place, mind you. It's a beautiful apartment, so I was okay with the deal, even though I wasn't happy. Unfortunately, my brother is now used to getting everything he wants or needs. He starts asking me to pay for more and more of the groceries. Idiot me, thinking mom and dad had cut down on his allowance now that the rent is so expensive. Agreed to take up the slack. Big mistake. They were still giving him the same amount. He just wanted more. He starts asking me for more and more things, and then whines to mom when I don't give it to him. My parents came over and over again and get him whatever he wants. New computer, new MacBook, new iPhone, heck, even a car. Up until this point, my parents could afford all of this and, somehow, still save well for their retirement. My mom was completely honest with me about their finances, as when the time came, the power of attorney would transfer to me. So she wanted me to know where they stood. They were on track for a long, comfortable retirement. But then my dad unfortunately lost his job through very unusual circumstances. His company just disappeared, and his boss left the country. This messed my dad up for quite a while, and he decided it was time to kick back and enjoy an early retirement. He was only 2 years short of retirement age anyway. My brother was furious. He would rage about how dad had betrayed him for not continuing to work to fund his lifestyle. He would regularly yell at my mom over the phone, saying that he expects them to continue to support him because he deserves the security of the lifestyle he has earned. I laughed my butt off at that line, which turned into another long fight, but was totally worth it. I knew that without dad's income, my parents couldn't afford the rent where we lived, so I decided to force the issue and moved into my own place. I had hoped that this would result in my brother moving as well, but alas, his psychologist wrote him another letter, and he continued to live there. I moved on with my life, got married, went back to university, bought a house, grown-up stuff. 5 years go by, and I have virtually no contact with my brother. I'm visiting my parents one day, and when I take them out for lunch, my mom breaks down crying because she can't pay. It turns out that my brother had been blackmailing my parents to continue to support him, saying that if they didn't, he'd end up homeless and it would be their fault, etc. He still had the full support of his medical team, and my parents didn't know what to do. He had burned through nearly 20 years worth of retirement savings since I moved out. My parents were both forced to go back to work to try and stretch out their retirement savings. I decided to visit this psychologist myself, only to find out she is one of those tell people what they want to hear so they keep giving me money predatory type psychologist who was enabling my brother because he was a cash cow for her. Our entire family was furious. Turns out, my brother had been recovered since his first year living away from home. He was perfectly able to work or study. He just didn't want to, and so she wrote in those bogus letters to let him get away with it. He decided to milk my parents of their savings to fund his lifestyle because he had earned it, and they owed him for not giving him what he wanted when he was younger. When confronted about it, he was entirely unapologetic. As far as he is concerned, he was entitled to everything he got, and then some. It's been a few years since then, and my parents have completely cut him off. They are surviving, but within a few years, I will probably end up having to support them. I have no issues with this. I'm their son, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do so, but it breaks my dad's heart knowing this. He grew up dirt poor and worked his butt off to provide for us, only to see it all disappear because of my selfish brother. The psychologist had her license suspended after my parents laid a complaint. I don't know if it was temporary or not, but I hope it was permanent. As for my brother, he works a dead-end retail job with a live-in boyfriend who pays for almost everything. He's still an entitled jerk, and I only see him during Christmas. I just want to emphasize, my brother had legitimate mental health issues. I do not want to take away from that at all. He just chose to willfully deceive everyone about the severity in order to demand that everyone else give him the life he feels he deserves. And before you ask, no, his mental illness did not contribute towards this attitude. It's not that sort of illness. He's just an entitled jerk. Having illnesses and/or disabilities and being a jerk doesn't contradict. An a-hole becoming sick is now a sick a-hole. I'm glad you found your own life and have a good relationship with your parents. Continue to stay away from a-holes, family or else. I'm so sorry that you and your parents had to suffer through that. It is really easy to be judging from the outside, but most don't realize how hard it is to stand up to a narcissist. Your parents did everything right raising you, because despite living with and enduring a manipulative sibling, you have turned out great, compassionate, caring, and responsible. Hopefully, you and your parents can recover from that as a family and enjoy being together for a long time to come. As for your brother, he can go kick rocks. May his beer always be stale and sauce never cling to his pasta. Psychologist. Sue the psychologist. Then sue the brother for fraud. Milk whatever he milked. I, 26 female, have just returned home from attending a close friend's, 27 female, wedding. Most of the wedding ceremonies turned out to be a crap show because my friend turned into a bridezilla. 7 people from the bride's party were planning to drop out of the final ceremony because she rejected our outfits at the last minute and wanted us to wear old-looking, awful outfits that she had got for us. I posted all of that here, but my post got removed because of some issue with my response to the judgment bot. Eventually, we decided to attend the wedding to not cause any drama. On the day of the reception, I was talking to a couple of people, including the groom, 34 male, who I don't know very well. We were standing in an area that was away from the main hall and was partially obscured by some decor. He started talking about how I never hung out with him one-on-one before, which was weird cause I only knew him as my friend's fiancé. I laughed it off, but he kept going on about it. I steered the convo towards their honeymoon when he said, "Bet you wish it was you who was going with me, right?" I didn't reply, cause I thought I misheard him. He kept repeating it though, and he started saying how if I was his bride, he wouldn't be able to control himself, and that we would have been doing it right here. I didn't know how to respond, so I said, "What the duck?" and started walking away when he grabbed my arm and said, "Let's get out of here. We can be done in 30 minutes and no one will miss us." To which I responded, "No, I will not." He still didn't let go of me and kept saying, "I know you want to." One of my friends, Emma, had overheard everything, and she intervened with her boyfriend at this point. The groom started panicking and said I was too drunk and being inappropriate. My friend knows I haven't been drinking all day, so he got pissed at the groom. All this caught the attention of the bride too, who came over and asked her hubby, who repeated the same explanation again. The bride started screaming at me for trying to sabotage her day, so I told her exactly what her precious husband had said to me, with Emma backing up everything. Unbeknownst to us, the bride's screaming had attracted everyone to the spot, and they had heard everything. My back was towards the main hall, so I had no idea. I left with some friends right away. According to the bride's sister, a lot of people believe me, and a massive chunk of them left soon after. The bride cried, and the groom got drunk. By the way, the groom was sober throughout the whole incident. The bride has sent me a lengthy text saying that I should have kept it quiet and talked about it later on, and that she's cutting off contact with me as I'm trying to destroy her marriage. Some other people in the party have said the same too, so I don't know. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He was being inappropriate, and then he restrained you from leaving. Not only is he a cheater, he sounds like a creep. You didn't initiate this, he did, and you tried to leave. You didn't shout it from the rooftops. The bride blew up and attracted attention to the situation where you were trying to explain yourself. The bride and groom are both massive a-holes, but especially the groom. Not the a-hole. If you were being accused of things, then of course you were going to try to explain what really happened. This isn't like you ran into church screaming something for no reason. He cornered you and got caught, tried to lie, and put you in an awkward situation. You weren't aware of how large your audience was, and they were throwing accusations at you. Personally, I would be glad to be rid of that friend. I, 28 male, and my fiancé, 29 female, have been together for 3 years. There are many things that I love and adore about my fiancé. She does have expensive taste and works to afford most of her clothes and jewelry. I work in IT for a state government agency. She works in her family's company and does work part-time. We equally pay for the bills, rent, and essentials. We are not planning on having an expensive wedding, as we would much rather save money to use on our honeymoon trip. My fiance's birthday was last weekend, and she had been asking about this bracelet that will complete her set. The bracelet costs about $300, and I went to the store to purchase it for her. I bought her a nice card and gift-wrapped the bracelet. We did a small celebration with a few of her friends, and she was very excited to receive the bracelet. She put it on and started showing it to her friends. I was browsing the marketplace when I saw the bracelet being sold for a little more. When I went to check the listing, she listed the bracelet for $500. I did confront her about the listing, and she got angry with me. She thinks that I was in the wrong for stalking her seller profile when I saw the listing appear when I refreshed the page. Am I the a-hole for being mad at my fiancé for selling an expensive gift? So she just got this item which she had asked for to complete her set, and then turns around and immediately sells it? Wow, I'd be upset too. And yes, if you are linked to someone on a marketplace site, their stuff does show up for you to view. Not the a-hole for being mad. Feelings are feelings. Not the a-hole, because it honestly sounds like she asked for it just to sell it. She told you she needed it to complete a set, but then sells it singly? She's not telling you the whole story here.